Welcome to Grim Ghouls, where true crime gets eerie fast, and tonight's case is one that haunted investigators for more than a century. Tonight, we're heading to rural Bavaria, where a quiet farm became the center of one of the most chilling mysteries in criminal history. I'm Madison.
And I'm Jasmine. And tonight we're digging into one of the most haunting, unsolved cases, the 1922 Hinterkaifeck murders. We'll walk through what happened, who the victims were, and the unsettling details that still don't add up. Stay with us, if you dare.
The Hinterkaifeck murders are among the most chilling cold cases in German criminal history, and for good reason. A small homestead just north of Munich became the scene of a gruesome discovery on April 4th, 1922. 6 people were found brutally murdered, their bodies concealed within the barn and living quarters of the isolated farmhouse. The victims were all members of the Gruber family and their newly hired maid. Even now, the case remains unsolved, and that unanswered question is part of what makes it so disturbing. Before we get into the timeline, I need to run through who everyone is so you don't get lost. We have Andreas, the father and husband, Kazila, the mother and wife, Victoria is their widowed daughter, Kazila, who is 7, and Joseph, 2, are Victoria's children, and Mary Bumgarner, 44, was the newly hired maid.
Andreas was the patriarch of the household. He was known as a reclusive farmer, and his relationships with neighbors were strained by his gruff demeanor and the rumors that followed his family. Andreas was respected for his agricultural skills and for the way he managed the farm with his diligence. He was also known to be frugal and miserly, which some speculate might have been the motive for the killings if robbery was involved. Kazila, Andrea's wife, was primarily involved in household duties and was known for her devout religious beliefs. She was seen as a stabilizer in the family, as she often helped resolve disputes between her husband and the neighbors. She was also known for her skills in traditional Bavarian cooking. Victoria, Andreas, and Kazila's daughter resided in Hinterkaifeck with her 2 children after her husband died in World War I, leaving her to take on the responsibilities of the farm while trying to maintain her role as a mother. Victoria was noted for her beautiful voice, which she used in the church choir, and which made her stand out in the village. There were rumors that she was having an incestuous relationship with her father, adding to the family's isolation. Victoria's daughter, Kazila, named after her grandmother, was a bright and promising student at the local school. She enjoyed helping at home and on the farm, where she mostly cared for the animals. Her teachers described her as curious and intelligent, always asking insightful questions about the world beyond the small community. Joseph, Victoria's son, was at the center of these rumors, which suggested he may have been the product of incest between Victoria and Andreas. The allegations further isolated the family from their community. The last member of the house was Maria Bumgarner. Maria remains an enigma due to her brief time at the farmstead. Her life beforehand hinted at simplicity, as she worked similar jobs across Bavaria. Maria was known as reliable and discreet, qualities that likely recommended her to the Gruber family, and helped her earn work in other homes across Bavaria.
So, in late February 1922, Andreas discovered footprints leading to the property, but none leading away. The family also found a Munich newspaper on the property, which none of them had purchased. In early March, the house keys went missing, and unusual noises were coming from the attic, mostly at night. But Andreas dismissed the noises as pranks by local youth. On March 30th, the previous maid quit her job, believing the house was haunted. The next day, Maria arrived to begin her first day as the new maid. Allegedly, the night before the murders, there was a brutal argument between the family members, which led Victoria to flee the house. She was found hiding in the forest and had to be brought back home. The series of events that happened the night are unclear because there were no surviving witnesses. However, based on the evidence gathered at the crime scene, investigators pieced together a likely scenario. The perpetrator lured each family member into the barn one by one, where they were attacked with a mattock, a tool similar to a pickaxe. Kazila, Victoria's daughter, showed signs of hair pulling, strangulation, and severe blunt force trauma to her head. Evidence suggests that she may have survived for several hours after the initial attack, and possibly tore out clumps of her hair because she was in pain or terror before she finally succumbed. The violence did not stop there. Maria, who had arrived only hours beforehand, was the last to be killed. She may have been investigating the strange noises that had already been unsettling the household.
The investigation into the Hinterkaifeck murders has been filled with complexities and dead ends from the beginning, which is part of what makes this case so frustrating. The case highlights the limitations of early 20th century forensic techniques and the challenges faced by rule law enforcement. In the initial investigation, locals and neighbors were allowed to walk freely through the farm, which potentially destroyed or contaminated crucial evidence. The bodies were buried before a thorough autopsy could be performed, limiting the available physical evidence. During this time, fingerprinting was in its infancy and DNA analysis had not been invented. The killer or killers remained on the property for several days after the murders, feeding the cattle and eating from the kitchen, as if they knew the farm well enough to move through it without fear. There were no signs of forced entry, suggesting the victims might have known their attackers.
There are 3 major theories in this case, and none of them completely explain every detail. The first is the vengeful neighbor theory. Lorenz, a neighbor and potential suitor of Victoria, seemingly had premature knowledge of where the bodies were located and began leading and organizing searches. Some speculate that he could have been the real father to Joseph and committed the murders due to family rejections. The next theory is the escaped convict theory. Some speculate that an escaped convict or World War I deserter stumbled onto the farmstead seeking food and shelter. This theory is supported by the local neighbors reporting unfamiliar individuals during the time period. The last theory is the incest cover-up. Some of the locals, influenced by superstition and the eerie circumstances surrounding the murders, believe that the supernatural had been involved. This theory persists in local folklore. Several years later, as criminal psychology advanced, experts attempted to create profiles of the potential killer/killers. The analysis they came up with concluded that the perpetrator was likely familiar with the family and the farm layout, physically strong and capable of overpowering multiple victims. They were methodical and patient and possibly suffering from some form of psychosis or severe personality disorder. Despite numerous investigations, including a re-examination of the case in 2007 by German police using modern techniques, the Hinterkaifeck murders remain unsolved.
Less than a year after the murders took place, the farm was demolished to remove any reminders of the violence that has taken place there. But the story never really disappeared. During the demolition, additional evidence was uncovered. A mattock covered in dried blood hidden in the attic, and a penknife were found in the hay of the barn. After the demolition, a small concrete monument was erected where the farm once stood to serve as a memorial to the victims and as a reminder of the tragedy.
And that's where we're leaving the story of Hinterkaifeck tonight. And honestly, it only gets more unsettling the longer you sit with it. An isolated farm, footsteps in the snow, strange noises in the attic, and a killer who may have stayed in the house for days, moving through the same rooms the family had just occupied. More than 100 years later, no one truly knows who did it. That's the part that lingers. This case doesn't end with answers, it ends with silence. And the silence is what makes it so hard to forget.
Thank you for hanging out with us tonight on Grim Ghouls. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the podcast, leave us a rating, and share us with your fellow true crime lovers and spooky besties. And remember, lock your doors, trust your gut, and maybe don't investigate the strange noises coming from the attic. We'll see you in the next case.
Bye, ghouls!